The 476th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
And that could make a difference. Lawson at the buzzer. Got it! Maybe not. Ty Lawson wins it at the buzzer.
Deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Gets the roll. Here we go. Page has it. Carolina down one. 84-83. Page into the front court with 4 seconds. Page to the rim. Got it! Got it! 9/10 of a second to go. Inbounds. Washington gets it to Warren. His full court shot. No good. Marcus Page baby. Does it for the Tar Heels. Carolina wins it.
Don't force it if you're Goss.
Comes in. Blocked by Meeks. Buried up ahead to Jackson. And he dunks it down for the 5-point lead. Matthews off the mark. And this year, the confetti is going to fall for North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time. Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the show. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services, and Josh and Anthony, we're here with you guys once again tonight, 3 hours after Carolina goes on the road to Raleigh, and they defeat the Wolfpack 63-61, and to improve to 11-6 on the year. They are now 4-1 in the ACC, and looks like this team is rounding into form, and they have done what we asked them to do, which was build off that win at Notre Dame a week ago. They've now come back and earned some massive wins, most recently today against the Wolfpack, and we're here to talk about all of that. We'll take a look at the box score. I've got a great quote from Hubert Davis that I will relay to you guys. We'll give you the stat of the game balls, and so much more, but the Heels go on the road, as I mentioned, and get this win to improve to 39-7 in the last 46 games against the Wolfpack. Hubert Davis is now 6-2 against NC State. And all-time in Raleigh, Carolina is 70-48, including 20-6 in the Lenovo Center. The final score would indicate that there was a dramatic finish to the game, and there was, and it was all done by Jalen Washington, who got the go-ahead dunk to put Carolina up 63-61, and then got the game-sealing block on the other end to secure the victory. And in case you haven't seen it, here's what it looked like, or if you're listening, here's what it sounded like.
Here's Taylor with 6, 5. He will drive to the basket, put it up, rejected Washington, and recovered, and the ball game is over. Jalen Washington, the rejection.
All right, so there you go. Jalen Washington with the biggest play of the game, the biggest play of the season, and for him, the biggest play of his career, and really all coming in the biggest minute of his career, getting the go-ahead dunk on a great over-the-head pass by Elliot Cadeau, and then he seals it on the other end. And then you see the emotion from him, and taunting the State fans, the players, as he left the floor. He denied doing that in the postgame, by the way. He said that was not him, but you clearly can see that he was a big part of all that going on. Just initially, buddy, when you look at this win for Carolina, there should not be a player more happy about his performance than Jalen Washington, a guy that has been criticized and ridiculed by yourself and by myself included, was a big part as to why Carolina came away with the victory today. And, the team mobbed him in the locker room. And I think, he should go to bed tonight really proud of the effort that he put on the court, because Carolina does not win this game without his double-double.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what we've seen. And, I mean, it's been 3 games in a row now where he has been very impactful in the outcome of the games for Carolina. And this is what we were hoping that he would eventually unlock. Is he going to be a guy that's going to take over the way that we thought he would, coming out of the gate this season? Oh, no. There is no chance that he is going to be able to evolve into that guy because, hell, they said it today on the broadcast. He hadn't hit a 3 so far this year. We were talking about how this was going to be a different looking team because their 5-man could stretch the floor. But you're seeing him evolve. This is very similar to what we saw from Armando Bacot last year, where at some point in the season, it was early in conference play for Armando as well, it really just started to click that what this team needs me to be right now is to be a rim protector that can find a way to rebound at a high level and really just affect what the other team is seeing. Because early in the year, it was way too easy for teams to walk inside. You have a 7-footer on the floor, and teams were walking inside and finishing with ease. Now, you're seeing what having a presence on the interior is actually allowing Carolina to do. So it's been huge for them to have him back out there and playing a significant part because, you remember, towards the end of non-conference play, he literally was just not playing. They were just not using him. They were saying, look, we're going to look at Vin Allen Lubin. Occasionally, we'll throw Jalen Withers there. They were pretty much starting to get to the point where you were wondering, would they actually see a role for Jalen Washington? I believe one of the first times that we talked about them shortening the lineup, we said he's probably a guy that doesn't end up playing. And now we're looking at him as a key part of what Carolina's doing, a part of a great defensive effort today. And he needs to get a lot of credit, man, because I think you're right. I tweeted it after the game as well. We had been really, really hard on him because we expected so much and we didn't land a guy out of the portal. And it put a lot of pressure on him. Now it's looking like he's finding his groove. And hopefully that's something that we can see carry on through the rest of conference play, especially when Carolina has to face some more legitimate bigs.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, the reason why I was critical of him was in large part was because I believed he was capable of doing more and that he was capable of giving us more than what he was giving us. To expect this guy to be a walking double-double, I do think was asking too much of him in terms of replacing Armando Bacot and what he was last year for Carolina. But, you wanted him to reach just a consistent level of play, which is why we thought, look, the Notre Dame game, when he had, I think, 8 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 blocks, we focused on the points and the rebounds and said, okay, if we can get this every night moving forward, it's a step in the right direction for a front court that is just looking for consistency. And that's what that group has done the last 3 games. It's not a coincidence that they've played their most consistent basketball up front, and it's all resulted in 3 wins, 3 very different wins, but nonetheless 3 wins and wins that Carolina needs and wins that Carolina can build off moving forward. Next week when they got 2 winnable games at home and even down the backstretch of the year when we know the schedule will indeed get tougher. So, I think it's just a lot of credit to him. Sean May filled in for Hubert Davis on his radio show earlier this week and said that, Jalen Washington is a different big and they have to coach him differently because it's a different skill set than what we're traditionally seeing from a Carolina big man. No, he hasn't hit a 3-point shot this year, but he does have the ability to hit a 3. He does have the ability to hit an 18-foot jump shot. You compared it to Armando Bacot. I think it's kind of like when it all came together for John Henson. And it came together for John Henson in his sophomore year, a guy that he's built very similar to, and John Henson would eventually mold into, an all-ACC caliber player in a first-round draft pick. I'm not putting that type of expectation upon Jalen Washington, But when it all came together for him, you really saw the type of player he could become. And it was a consistent guy that averaged 12 and 8. If Jalen Washington just finds consistency night in, night out for this team, it'll do wonders for a team that relies heavily on its backcourt. Speaking of which, Ian Jackson was sensational once again tonight. He scored a game-high 21 points. He was 8 of 15 from the field, 5 of 8 from behind the three-point line. And on a team that features a fifth-year super senior, that's the number 2 leading scorer in the history of the program, when Carolina needed a bucket, it was Ian Jackson that they were getting the ball to. It was Ian Jackson that was the guy there to answer the call and answer the bell. And I've got a statement that I'm going to bring up a little bit later in the show. But this metamorphosis we've seen from this team in the last month, where we were so RJ dependent, to now we're running our offense through an 18-year-old freshman, and we're succeeding the way that we're succeeding. Got to credit the kid because he's the guy making all the shots fall down. But a big credit really to RJ Davis for being willing to take a step back despite all he's accomplished individually, but more importantly on the coaching staff for realizing there needed to be a change. The way that they were playing was not successful, and I do think it's a big reason why Carolina now finds themselves on a 3-game winning streak. Let's take a look at the box score here. It's an ugly one, but it's a pretty one because it is a winning box score. Carolina wins despite shooting just 43% from the field. They were 26 of 60. NC State shot 37%. They were 24 of 65. Carolina, not 50% shooting like it was earlier in the week against SMU, but a timely 7 of 19 from behind the three-point line, which averages out to 37%. If they can shoot that on a consistent basis moving forward, really does wonders for them offensively. But more importantly, they guarded the three-point line at a high level. State was just 3 of 19 from behind the arc. Carolina was just 4 of 8 from the free throw line. NC State was 10 of 12. Carolina with 12 turnovers that led to 15 points for the Wolfpack. The Wolfpack committed 9 turnovers, which Carolina scored 12 points off of those. The Heels won the battle of the boards 40-38. They won the defensive battle 27-22. They were out-rebounded on the offensive glass 16-13. But a big key and a big reason why NC State lost this game, they grabbed 16 offensive rebounds, but just 9 second-chance points. Carolina had 6 second-chance points off their 13 offensive rebounds. Both teams got 8 points off their bench. Carolina won the battle in the paint 34-28. They won the battle in the fast break as well, 16-10. And Carolina had 17 assists on 26 made baskets. NC State was 7 assists on their 24 made baskets. The game was tied 8 times. There was 11 different lead changes. All in all, Carolina led for 28 minutes and 25 seconds. In regards to the box score, NC State shot the ball much better in the second half. They did shoot 60% from the field, but that wasn't enough for them to overcome a first half where Carolina held them to 20 points, and which was a season low in a half that Carolina has allowed. And State just shot 23% despite getting up 40 shot attempts. We talk about the defense and how good it was a year ago. Carolina tonight entered 50th in defensive rating according to KenPom. But they had jumped up, I think, 16 spots in the last week from the win at Notre Dame, what they did against SMU on Tuesday night, to where they found themselves this afternoon. This team can score as well as anybody. We know that. They're the highest scoring team in the league. That can put the ball in the basket. And they're going to win games this year because of their scoring prowess. Their commitment to defense, though, cannot be understated because it's what's flipped everything for them. Have you noticed the last 3 games, they haven't fallen behind by double digits? In the last 3 games, they've been able to build either double-digit point leads or, like in today's case, they led by as many as 9 deep into the second half. It all starts with their commitment to that end of the floor, their effort on that end of the floor. we could sit here and talk about them not having the size that a Carolina team has, but there also was effort issues and communication issues and just a lot of areas that needed to be cleaned up. And they've grown tremendously on the defensive end of the floor, and it's a big reason why they find themselves right now on a 3-game winning streak.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one area that, early in the season, we kept saying, I mean, you were reading off the stats, every single game that Carolina played, still the worst in the ACC in terms of point per game allowed. And that's something that, these last 3 games, that's really changed for Carolina. The effort is there defensively. You can see it in the half court. We're not questioning, why aren't they going to the full court press? Because you don't need it. You're giving the effort at least on initial possessions. That's the thing about today. Today, I thought that on the initial possession, Carolina was playing really, really well defensively. The way that they were reacting to, even areas where Carolina should have been scrambling because they doubled late or whatever, Carolina was still recovering at an incredibly high rate. And I think that's something that we were looking for from this team early in the year, because especially now that you've got Seth Trimble back, you've got 2 really, really good defensive guys on the perimeter, 2 of the better ones in the conference in him and Drake Powell. And now, one of the things we kept saying the entire non-conference slate was, we know why this team is struggling, because they don't have any protection at the rim. Teams aren't afraid of trying to go inside against them. Now that Jalen Washington has met the moment and he's showing that he can be what Carolina needs in the middle of their defense, Carolina's been fantastic defensively. And I think the fact that you go back and when did it start? It was that game against Notre Dame where Jalen Washington had 6 blocks. I don't think that is something to just look past. I really think that was the moment where Carolina said, okay, now we've got it. We've got a rim protector. We don't have to put so much pressure on being able to stop the ball on the perimeter or else. I think that really was just a sigh of relief for those guys out there. And since that moment, Carolina has been, it feels like there's less pressure on them, and it's allowing them to succeed a little bit more. And if this defense keeps up, then you got to feel like they've got a chance against some of the better teams in the conference. That was what was most worrisome for us, was that they were going to get beat by teams that could simply just outscore them. Even as good as Carolina's offense is, it was those teams that, you thought, okay, they're going to get Carolina in this up and down game because we just haven't been able to really slow that down. But credit to this defense for the steps that they've taken. And you're right, credit to this coaching staff for helping to develop this group, get them to play the way that they need to on that end of the floor. But the most credit needs to go to the players who have done it themselves.
Yeah, after today's game and other results around the country, Carolina has now moved up to 42nd in defensive rating according to KenPom. So they continue to climb in the metrics, which they're not the end all be all, but they are a good sounding board and a good way to tell you kind of where your team lies. And they're improving defensively, and the metrics are starting to show just that. We'll now move to the quote of the game from head coach Hubert Davis. And look, this is a game that I don't know. Like, as Carolina fans, we expect to win this game. When you look at the stat that I mentioned, 39-7 in the last 46, Carolina has not lost back-to-back games against NC State since 2003. We expect to beat NC State every time we take the floor. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I don't know if this team wins this game a month ago. And so that kind of question was brought up, and here was how the way Hubert Davis answered that, saying, quote, "Well, the schedule that we played in the non-conference has helped us. A lot of us don't even include the preseason. We went to Memphis, and we played a true road game at Hawaii. I mean, how many games have we played? 17 games, 10 away from home. Playing here is a very difficult environment, but we've been there before, and we've been in that situation where we needed a basket or we needed a stop. So it's great to be able to pull from experiences that you've had as a team and individually to be able to execute. And that's what we talked about in the huddle prior to the last possession defensively, is we were in the same position against UCLA. We just needed to get one stop, end quote. There's a lot of talk about how bad our conference is, and we can't run from that. The ACC is not the ACC that we grew up watching. It's not the ACC that we even grew up covering, because when we got into the media, the ACC was still, for all intents and purposes, the second best conference in college basketball. Carolina still put together the schedule that they put together to be able to win a lot of ACC games. And so I think, what happened along the way was got devalued is that, just because you're losing close non-conference games, it's not going to mean anything because, you should beat these teams once you get in the ACC play. Yeah, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, though. Like, if you're a Carolina fan and you thought that we were going to waltz into that arena in that environment and blow them out, I've got news for you. That was never, I think, in the cards for this game. Even if Carolina would have played at a high level, because this game always means more to NC State. Their season was somewhat already once again hanging in the balance. They're now 9-7. They're now below 500 in conference play. I don't think they're capable of doing what they did last March, winning 5 games in 5 days to win a conference tournament. Like, they needed this game. They needed something to pick me up. And so they were going to put more effort on the floor, I think, out of the gate. You knew that arena was going to be at the highest level of octane as it's going to be for a game for them all season long. And I think we got to remember, as Carolina basketball fans, that this is part of the journey, man. We play those games in November and December so we can make sure we're winning games in January, in February, and March. We lost games against Kansas. We lost games against Michigan State. We lost games against Florida. But the hope is that they prepare you for the conference season. And I find it hard to believe that had Carolina not gone through those learning experiences, do they make the winning plays they make down the stretch at Notre Dame a week ago? Do they make the winning plays tonight that they made after blowing a 9-point lead with 5.5 minutes to go? I don't know. And so as tough as those losses were in the moment, we're now reaping the benefits and the rewards because Carolina is winning games on the road in the ACC, finding an identity and solidifying themselves as a contender in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is kind of what you're hoping for. And I mean, you're right that there are people that are complaining about this game that are looking at this and saying, oh, Carolina should have beaten this team more handedly. Guys, this is just not how this rivalry works now. And, even before the last few years, I mean, yeah, there would be the occasional time that Carolina would blow them out. That was just a team that Roy Williams always had their number. We knew that because, again, he talked so many times about how much he had a disdain for NC State, how to him, in his mind, that was probably the team that was more hated than Duke, because I think Duke, you respected them. They had an all-time great coach on the sideline. They were a team that was competing for national championships. NC State was not. And, even to this day, you go, look back at last year and say, well, they competed for a title last year. They did. But that was the first time in how long that they were a legitimate threat to actually win a national title. And even then, you looked at them as a team that was still an 11 seed coming into the NCAA tournament. So, but today was important for them. They felt like this was probably one last gasp to save their season. Now, they kind of proved last year that you can get into, as long as you are a team that's in the ACC tournament, which is something we're going to experience this year because they are not putting every single team in the conference in the tournament. You'd imagine they still find a way to get in, that they could potentially make a run. But there was a level of desperation on their side today, and you could feel it in that building too. And so it's not shocking at all that State was able to make runs to get themselves back in this game and down the stretch have a feeling like they were going to be able to win. This conference also is just better than I think people realize. Now, does that mean that there are a lot of tournament teams in this conference in terms of comparing that to the other conferences? Oh God, no. There are not a lot of good teams in this conference. I think some of the teams that are at the bottom of this conference are about as bad as you're going to find in the Power Five, or the Power Five, because you're still counting the Big East. But I mean, I think Carolina, when they needed to show up in this game, they found a way to make plays down the stretch. And I'm with you. I wonder if this game's played a few weeks earlier, before they have to go, down the stretch of the game against Florida, learn from that, and eventually turn around going down the stretch in the game against UCLA. What Carolina had to do down the stretch in the game against Notre Dame. Does Carolina find a way to execute and win this game, or is this a loss on their schedule? So you could see today that, again, Carolina, took some things from those games and were able to put that into this game. And that's why playing a tough non-conference schedule can be advantageous. Now, the thing is, the way that the net is set up, it means that some of these games that Carolina is going to play against maybe borderline tournament teams, they're going to have to find a way to win. They've had one game in conference against a team like that so far, and that was Louisville. That's a game that Carolina lost. That's why it's going to be important moving forward that Carolina is able to find a way to pick up victories over teams like Pittsburgh, especially because you play them twice. You want to be able to get them at least once, maybe twice, with how they've been playing recently. On the road at Clemson, that's going to be a tough one, but one that Carolina should be able to get. And if they can continue to win the way that they are, the biggest thing that this team really has needed all season is confidence. That's when they've looked their best, is when they've been at their most confident. And so hopefully a win like today continues to build on that confidence.
Stat of the game, I went 3-point percentage. Carolina almost doubled them up in that category. Carolina, 7 of 19 from behind the 3-point line, 37%. Well, on the flip side, NC State was just 3 of 19 from deep, which comes out to 16%. You mentioned Carolina's initial defense. Carolina's half-court defense, starting out the Notre Dame game for the first 24 minutes of that game. The other night, the first 28 minutes. And then I thought tonight was the best, the most consistent from start to finish, the best Carolina's half-court defense has been in the game this year. It was just relentless. It was almost suffocating. Like, State just could not get clean looks. And, you go back to the game last year, which was kind of played this way, was a low-scoring physical affair. I mean, that was a game where we came out saying, as great as Carolina was defensively, State missed some shots that, if they go down, maybe the result goes differently. I didn't feel that way today. I thought Carolina, their half-court pressure is why they didn't have to full court press. Like, people are probably wondering, why has Josh quit complaining about not pressing? Well, because if you want to guard like that in the half court, by God, you don't got to pick up full court pressure.
Yep.
Because you're there, you're on the catch, you're coming off of screens, and you're right there in the shooter's hip pocket. You're doing great jobs with ball screens. Your communication is there, your recovery is there. There's multiple times where Carolina scrambled and they took away shots that they were not taking away a month ago. And those are little things, but it really comes down to effort. Their effort has picked up so dramatically on that end of the floor to where it's dictating the pace. And now teams are playing the way that we want to play. And it's why Carolina got 16 points in the fast break. It wasn't just running off of turnovers; it was running off of misses as well. But I really thought their ability to defend the 3-point line, and then I thought the 3-point offense today was timely. It felt like every single time Carolina needed a 3, they got one, especially one. I think RJ made it to make it either, I think it was 56-51 or 57-52. A Seth Trimble drive down the baseline, a kick to Elliot Cadeau, who then swings it to Ian Jackson, who had a good look from 3. But he passed it up to RJ Davis, who had a better look from 3. and the All-American put the ball in the basket. And then, of course, you got the big three late from Ian Jackson as well. Just another sign that kid has it. And so I thought that stat was a big difference ultimately in the ball game. Let's get to more thoughts, more takeaways from Carolina's 63-61 win at NC State. We appreciate everyone that's watching live with us, whether it's on Twitter, YouTube, or on the Facebook channel. In regards to Jalen Washington, his first career double-double, had the game-winning dunk, the game-sealing block. I'm getting a lot of comments here on the chat. Our guy Greg Ward said, if Jalen Washington can get it together like today, the team has a lot higher ceiling. Ball goes in the post, more guards can get loose for open shots like they did a few times today. Jalen Washington and his blocks were a big deal. Donnie Melton, we need Washington to be consistent all season long. And those guys are definitely right. If this is going to be what Carolina's going to get more often than not from Jalen Washington, they go up an octave. And I don't know if I think you're asking too much to get 12 points and 11 rebounds. But if he becomes the guy that's giving you 10 and 8, 8 and 8, I think it does wonders for Carolina. Just because that, him and Elliot Cadeau have developed a nice two-man game. To me, it was not a coincidence that Elliot was able to find him for the game-winning dunk. We've seen them kind of play with each other in the half court, using Washington as a roller to really get him the ball to the rim, whether he's either dunking, laid it up, or drawing a foul. But I think it was just tonight was a nice reminder of what it's like watching two kids kind of respond to adversity and kind of just grow as in the year. Because this has all come together for him in the last week, where he's this bona fide shot blocker, and he's a guy that's protecting at the rim. Some of his rebounds today were man rebounds. He went up and just got the ball. And there were a few other times he couldn't get the rebound because, quite frankly, he was being fouled. But, this game, I think, was not a surprise to me, because if you've watched him and you've watched him closely, you can tell when a guy was on the verge of breaking out. And the Notre Dame game and even the SMU game were proof that this type of performance was coming from him. And it showed up today on the road in a rivalry matchup. Carolina needed all of that production, and just really happy for Jalen Washington that he can have this moment, because we'll never know what it does for him confidence-wise moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, confidence-wise, I think it's just a massive boost for him, and just continues to build upon the success that he's had. To make the two most important plays of the game. And, you could say that him, dunking to take the lead, that ultimately, was on Elliot Cadeau for making the pass. That's fine. You could say that. But he's the guy that made the basket. So for him to make that and then turn around and make it a block, because, if this game goes to overtime, who knows, man? It felt like NC State had the momentum. And look, I get that it's a rivalry game. If Carolina loses this game, this is a severe blow to their chances to make the tournament. Because again, we've said it in this conference, although some of these teams feel like they're better than their record would suggest, they will at least put up fights against you. You've got to find ways to win these games. So I think for him to come up in that moment and make that type of play is amazing, because this is a guy that could have just said in the middle of non-conference play, you know what? They think that I'm this bad. Well, then they're right. I'm losing minutes. That's fine. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. He didn't. He got in the gym. He worked on getting better. And the reason that I compared him to Armando earlier, clearly not the same type of player, but I think finding your role on the team. He found that, look, in order for me to be successful on this team and to give them what they need, I have to be able to protect the rim. And that is the biggest thing that he has brought for Carolina. Today was even more of a surprise because not only did he do that, not only did he come up with that big play at the end for Carolina to win them the game on that end of the floor, he also brought the scoring and he brought the rebounds. This is the first time he's ever had a double-double in his career. 11 points, 4 of 6 from the field, so very efficient. And he gets 12 rebounds, 6 of them on the offensive end, 6 of them on the defensive end. The 6 on the offensive end, massive. The team had 13 as a whole. He had 6. Him and Vin Allen Lubin together had 8. So both of those guys, very promising performances there, on that end of the floor. But, I mean, this is just what you're looking for from him moving forward, is just to give you enough at that 5 spot to make it where teams don't look at that position as an automatic bucket inside and a spot they don't have to guard on the floor on the other end, where they can just, pack it in, to the paint and make these Carolina guards be able to hit shots from the outside. I think that him being able to make this sort of impact moving forward, and I know it's not going to be consistent, but if you can just give us, 8.5, 9 points a game and rebounding wise, you can just give us a consistent 7 to 8. I feel like most Tar Heel fans would feel pretty confident, because to me, I think the ability to protect the rim, that isn't going to go away. I think that's something that will be there the rest of the year. It's the other stuff that I don't know if that's going to necessarily carry over, but hopefully it will.
And I think it's important to note, he did all of this after getting benched in the first minutes of the game, because Carolina came out, and I'm not going to say they're not ready to play because they didn't fall behind double digits, but they were not ready for the fight that State was ready to bring. And he was a big reason why. I mean, Ben Middlebrooks for the first 3 minutes kicked his butt.
They had State 4 offensive rebounds on the first 2 possessions of the game.
Yeah, so he did all of that after being taken out. Credit Vin Allen Lubin, who came in, I think, just kind of stabilized Carolina, was able to match the physicality of a Ben Middlebrooks and of just State overall. He grabbed 9 rebounds today that also played a part. But he wasn't the only guy that responded after being benched. So did Elliot Cadeau. You go back to when this game was 56-47, and it felt like Carolina had really put their fingerprint on the game, and State, it felt like they were almost out of gas. And if Carolina got it to double digits, the game was going to be over. Back-to-back turnovers from Cadeau. And look, a lot of people were complaining for fouls. The first one, when he threw the ball to Jalen Washington, it felt like, to me, it was like the quarterback throwing the ball at a wide receiver who'd been interfered with. Cool. Because Jalen Washington did get cleared out of the play. Regardless, on the road, in that environment, knowing who you are and the opponent is, you can't risk that. You can't guarantee you're going to get the benefit of the whistle or not. The next one, where he definitely got ran into, there's a legitimate contact there, but I mean, the free throw numbers would tell you that there were not a lot of fouls called. So, you should have not expected to get a whistle there. But those 2 turnovers led to buckets and breathed life into State, to the point where they came back and took the lead. And with 3 minutes to go, they had all the momentum on their side. He gets taken out. He gets benched. But I think more than anything, and I think you really got to credit Hubert Davis and his staff, it wasn't a benching in terms of negativity. It wasn't a benching in terms of, hey, we're going to sit you on the over here and we're going to yell at you and make you feel sorry. It was, no, we need you to clear your head, take a deep breath, move on from those 2 plays, because we need you to win the game. And sure enough, who found the pass who made the pass to Ian Jackson in the corner for a 3? Mm-hmm. Look at the pass he made to Jalen Washington. How many guards in the country even trust themselves to make that pass with that on the line? Because that ball goes through Washington's hands, he misfires it, whatever. there's going to be a lot of finger pointing at him if this final result doesn't go Carolina's way. He didn't shoot the ball great. He was just 2 of 9 from the field, had 4 points, but 11 assists, did have 3 turnovers, all in 29 minutes. I love the toughness he showed after committing 2 bad turnovers, but being able to come back and be the guy he needs to be for this team when they're trying to close opponents out on the road, making big-time passes for big-time buckets to help Carolina secure the victory.
Yeah, I mean, I think benching might be strong of how to put it. I think it was just a momentary look. You're getting subbed out here. We got to figure out what's going on because you've turned it over 2 straight possessions. You've pretty much given them life to get back into this game. We got to figure out what's happening because we need you on the floor here late. I think the goal was to always put him back out there. But, I mean, yeah, you see again why it is so important for him to be a part of this team. Because I know that there are a lot of people that have become sold on the fact that Carolina should just let RJ Davis run things, especially at this point with how Ian Jackson's playing. Put Seth Trimble out there on the floor as a starter and just let it roll. And I mean, look, from a scoring perspective, maybe that ends up helping Carolina out. Maybe they do end up scoring more points than they've been scoring here during this recent stretch. But there's also no guarantee of that because you're taking your best share of the basketball off the floor. That's what Elliot Cadeau is. What you see in some of these moments, that pass to Ian Jackson, the play, which I'll talk about in more in depth here in just a second, to Jalen Washington. That is what we saw from him coming out of high school that had us comparing him to Kendall Marshall. Those are plays that only special point guards can make. And, I mean, again, you go back to that play that he made to Washington. When he picked that ball up, I said, oh, he's turning the ball over here. There's not really much here. Now, credit to Jalen Washington for doing the thing that we get frustrated at times that Carolina doesn't do when guys pick the ball up. He kept moving without the ball. He said, I've got to find a way to get in a position to be able to make a play. But, I mean, the fact that with his back turned to him, Cadeau somehow sees that and makes that pass without traveling, it's unbelievable. And it's why you need him to be out there as often as possible. Again, today, not a game that you're going to put on his highlight reel and say, this dude played amazing in all aspects of the game. But the one aspect where you needed him to play well, he did for the most part. Yeah, he turned the ball over 3 times, which was tied for the team lead. He also had 11 assists, though. And with a guy that handles the ball as much as he does, an 11-3 turnover ratio or assist to turnover ratio is certainly not terrible by any stretch. So I think that for him, another guy, and I think more than anybody on this team, a guy that really, really thrives off of confidence. I think this was huge for him. I mean, you saw him after the game celebrating with Jalen Washington, the first guy to put the Wolves down symbol up. That shows you that he's having fun, and that's the most important thing for him because when he is having fun, when he's playing loose, that's when he's playing at his best. So hopefully this is a big confidence boost for him as well.
Next person I want to talk about here. Of course, a lot of talk going into the game about this not being a rivalry. That conversation comes up every time these two teams meet. I think you could tell by the way that Carolina celebrated on the court and going into the locker room, they view it as a rivalry. Even though Ian Jackson said after the game on Tuesday night against SMU, this was not the rivalry game he was looking forward to. Obviously, heading towards the first matchup with Duke, which we are 3 weeks away from. But when you say that stuff publicly, you put a target on your back. We've kind of seen it where, we saw Sam Howell make a comment one time about it, and his team respond well. Drake May made a comment about it, did not respond as well. Ian Jackson, though, showing you that he's just him, goes on the road in the most hostile environment he's played in so far. And I know they played at Allen Fieldhouse, but I don't think the nice folks of Kansas say the things that we know this NC State fan base is prone to yell at.
How dare you assume that they're rude people? I've heard apparently from their fan base, they're great humans.
Anyway, Jackson, 21 points, 8 of 15 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3 in 32 minutes. If you watch college basketball, you love college basketball, you're probably aware that some kid named Cooper Flagg dropped 42 points in a win for Duke over Notre Dame today. And he was sensational. And he has flourished in the last couple of weeks. And he looks every bit the part of the number one pick he's going to be next year in the NBA. And that's going to be the headline. And maybe that's rightfully so. What Ian Jackson did today and what he's done in the last month should be celebrated and should be talked about, in my opinion, on the same level of what Cooper Flagg is doing. Because he's a better scorer than Flagg is, despite not having a 42-point game to his ledger. And what he did today was on the road in an environment that I don't know how many freshmen are ready to go into that place, play at that high a level, with the target being on his back after what he said about this game not being a rivalry. And then you just look at what this has brought upon in the last month. A month ago, we knew that Ian Jackson was going to be a part of the team. We knew he was going to be a role on the team. I've referred to him as Carolina's best scorer. No, he's Carolina's best player. And this has all happened in about a 3-week span. You go from about the second half of the Florida game to where we are now. This is when this has all happened. And, you know, how much of this has to deal with Seth Trimble getting injured, I ultimately don't know. I'd like to think at some point Hubert Davis would have said, he's too good for me to have him come off the bench. But to do what he's doing while being on a team that features a fifth-year senior that happens to be your second leading scorer, and be so good and so worthy and so confident to become your team's number one option is nothing short of remarkable. Because as much as I loved his talent, and we talked about his talent all summer long, I never thought this was possible. I never thought we'd be at a point where he would be Carolina's best player and best scoring option. And that's what he is. And his emergence, as much as anything, Jalen Washington's growth as a rebounder, Drake Powell and Seth Trimble's ability to defend on the perimeter, all of that stuff. His emergence single-handedly has changed Carolina's ceiling. Because, guys, there aren't many dudes in this league that can do what he does, and we're seeing that on a night-in, night-out basis. And no, this wasn't the highest point total he's put up so far this year, but I thought today, for all things considered, the most impressive performance and a run of impressive performances from the young man known as Captain Jack.
Yeah, I mean, it's up there. It's got to be up there because every time that Carolina called on him, it was a big moment. And he found a way to knock the shots down. I mean, that shot right on the arc, right in front of the bench. I mean, that seemed to be his shot all day. They went to him all the time in that position, and he was able to knock down those shots. So, I mean, yeah, it's incredibly impressive. Is it on the same level as Flagg? I mean, that's asking a lot after today. But I do think that it should be talked about on nearly the same level. Like, these guys, I think, should be getting talked about a lot because it's two very special freshmen at the two schools in the conference that matter the most. And both guys, I think now that will be a legitimate matchup to watch going in. I think a lot of people thought that coming into that game, the talk would be about the Duke freshmen only. And you thought that the guy for Carolina that everybody was going to be talking about would be RJ Davis. RJ Davis will be talked about, but he is becoming a second storyline to what has just been an amazing season for a special player in Ian Jackson. I mean, this guy every time that you say to yourself, well, how can it really get much better? He always finds a way for it to get better. So credit to him. Again, Carolina called on him in so many crucial moments in this game. When they needed buckets, that was the guy that they were going to. And he does not seem fazed with taking on that type of role. That seems to be something that he honestly thrives in. And so, the hope is that moving forward, that remains the case for him, and that, this is the type of performance that we're going to see. I find it hard to believe that now that we've seen it in 6 straight games, he's had 18 or more points. 5 of them, he's had 20 or more points. This is the guy that you're seeing the rest of the season. And this is why Carolina is going to run their offense through him. It's a smart move. It's a great job by the coaching staff, to say that, hey, this is what needs to happen. This is the guy that we got to run it through. I know he's a true freshman, but the way he can just create baskets that just about nobody else on this team can, it's something that we have to rely on. And you've seen that Carolina has bought into that in the last few games, and it's made for a much better performance overall for the Tar Heels. Maybe not better in terms of the number of points that they're putting up, but everything just looks to be functioning better. And I do think that part of that is because they're trusting the true freshman, who is just going off at this point and is making a hell of a case, if he continues to play this way, even with how slow he started, to potentially be an All-American as a true freshman.
Last thing we'll talk about before we get to our discussion topic and hand out our game balls, something I forgot to do after the SMU game, it is something that I think we probably got the answer on Tuesday, but we definitely got the answer today. The rotation of what Carolina is going to be night in, night out is set. Hubert's found his guys. No K. Tyson once again today. No Ty Jean-Claude. And I do think Seth Trimble coming off the bench is here to stay, because he came off the bench and still played 25 minutes. So he doesn't have to start to still play a high number of minutes, and still have an impact on the basketball game. His scoring, I think, will obviously go down, but I think his perimeter defense and just another ball handler is something that Carolina will benefit from moving forward. But when you look at the rotation and you look at what it is, so every starter played at least 27 minutes. Washington 27, Cadeau 29, RJ 36 led the team, Powell 34, Ian Jackson 32. And then your reserves: Trimble 25, Lubin 13 minutes, 9 rebounds in 13 minutes, by the way. And then Jalen Withers with 4 minutes, all in the first half, mind you. Is this kind of what you expected it to be, just considering how inconsistent K. Tyson was? And I think the thing with him is that Carolina, I think, exhausted him as much as possible. Like, they gave him as much run to really make a difference.
Yep.
I think he's made one basket all year long against power conference competition. He made a layup at it was either a layup at Louisville or it was against Notre Dame. I don't remember the exact opponent, but I believe that's
well, remember, he had the 2 foul shots.
That's not a basket. That's a free throw.
Yeah, but I got to be honest. That's the only. I don't even remember the basket.
So
that was the only thing I remember.
He's got the one basket against power conference competition. Ty Jean-Claude's a great effort guy. I think you love how hard he plays. Not a guy that's good enough to play a significant role on this team with what this team is trying to do. So when you look at this 8 and what has emerged, is this kind of where you thought this thing was headed with all the inconsistencies, and more importantly, what do you think Carolina can accomplish with those 8? Because remember, I said kind of after the Florida game, you could play 6 players, maybe 7. When you look at the fact that Withers didn't play in the second half, that's kind of basically where we're at. But I feel like that's the best version of Carolina, are those 7 to maybe 8 guys that are seeing extended minutes on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy that if you never saw Jalen Withers again, I wouldn't care. I don't know what he does well. What he does consistently is really more of the answer. And so for me, like, whatever, man. If you want to play him in certain spots because you need more bodies at that spot, guys get into foul trouble, cool. Play him. The only other guy that I want to see outside of that group, if you get to a point where you need to have other guys on the floor, would be James Brown. I don't want to see any of those other guys. And the only reason I'm saying James Brown is because I want to figure out what exactly he is and whether or not you need to go into the transfer portal this offseason and get two bigs, or you just need to go out there and get one. Everybody else that's playing, I think, is legitimate. It's the guys that you would think should be out there and should be playing. The starters, I think, are pretty concrete at this point. It sucks for Seth Trimble. I know there was someone that pointed out in one of these groups that I'm in on Twitter, saying that they believe that the effort just wasn't there today from Seth Trimble. I think that's ridiculous. I think, frankly, it's asinine. And I think, we've seen he's adjusted to that role again. He still has a very big role on this team. And that's the thing that's the most important thing. We thought he was going to still have the type of role that he had before. And yeah, he's not necessarily scoring the ball, but again, he's coming off an injury, an upper body injury, which I believe was a concussion. That hasn't been confirmed by, the program or anything. They want to leave it vague, but I think that's what it is. And shaking that stuff off is really, it's difficult, man. It takes a little bit of time. He still had 5 rebounds today. He was still very impactful. 2 steals, played great on the defensive end of the floor. And then there's Vin Allen Lubin, who I think is perfectly fine in the role that he's in. I don't think that he needs to be the starter, especially right now, because when you're getting the type of rim protection that you're getting from Jalen Washington, you need that on the floor more than you need a guy like Vin Allen Lubin, who is a good offensive rebounder, is a guy that can create second chance opportunities, but is kind of limited defensively. So I think that 7 to 8 right there is where you want to be. It's what we were saying that they needed to do all this time, and they were very hesitant to do it. Now it seems like they bought into that, and they've said, you know what? This is what's going to allow us to have the most success. And in terms of what it does for Carolina, I do think it makes them better. I think that certainly is the case, especially defensively, because, the inconsistencies from Cade Tyson on the defensive end of the floor, the inconsistencies from Jalen Withers when he was playing more minutes, that was part of the reason why you just weren't a great defensive team. Do I think now all of a sudden you're the best defensive team in the conference? No, I don't think that's necessarily the case. But I do think that you're seeing a much better defensive performance since they've cut down that rotation. I think what it allows Carolina to do is look more like a tournament team. This is a team that we look at and say, yeah, that's a tourney group. Where when you were playing Cade Tyson more, when you were playing Jalen Withers more, you kind of were left scratching your head and saying, okay, is this really a team that's going to be capable of making the tournament if in some games this is our best lineup? So I like the fact that they've cut it down, and I think it's opened up a lot more success on the defensive end. And I think it has definitely allowed for Ian Jackson to become more of the focus on the offensive end as well here in these last few games.
All right, we gotta run. We gotta go through this pretty quickly, but we get to our discussion topic. And to me, I thought it was noticeable that when Carolina got the block, not to the same level that it was last year when they won at Duke, but we saw this team show some emotion. You got the wolf pack down or whatever it was from Jalen Washington. They were running to the locker room, waving goodbye at the Pack faithful after 2 hours of probably the most obscene things they've ever heard yelled at them in all their lives. Don't look now. This team is finding its identity. They're finding out who they are as an offense. They're finding out who they are as a defense. But more importantly, man, Dude, this group is finding a backbone. And it really comes back to what we thought about this team when they went to Kansas and lost at the buzzer, which coming out of that game, as disappointed as we were in the result, we said, no matter what, no matter the opponent, the environment, no matter where the game's going to be played, Carolina's going to show them Carolina's going to fight. Goes back to that audio we played in the preseason of Hubert Davis. North Carolina's here. What are you going to do? It feels like it took 2.5 months. It was a lot of, I think, frustration, some losses that we did not expect to have, and ways that we ended up getting beat were obviously not expected. But it feels that we have arrived at that point to where this team is, do they have the ceiling that we thought they had in the preseason? Maybe not. But as a Carolina fan, after a third straight win, first 3-game winning streak against power conference competition all year long, you're 4-1 in the league, your freshmen are growing, you've got a fifth-year senior that is learning out that less is sometimes more, your big men are starting to become more consistent. This team is starting to really find its form. And I think it's important that if you weren't on board, let's go ahead and get on board now. I don't know what this season's going to end up being. I truly don't. I think in my heart of hearts, I think this team is going to play significant basketball going into the month of March. They'll be playing high-level games against high-level competition. And I think what it is just a reminder of, every season is a journey. Every season is going to take a different path, especially in this NIL world, this transfer portal world. Like, look at some of the teams that are flopping around the country. UCLA has lost 4 out of 5. Calipari's 0-3 in the SEC. First time he started 0-3 in conference since he was the head coach at UMass in the late 80s. Arizona preseason top 10 team, they're not ranked. Carolina was among the biggest disappointments the first 2 months of the year. But it's a 5-month-long season. And I think this team, against all odds, and amid all the detractors and all the people that wanted Hubert Davis fired 10 days ago, this group is coming together. They're becoming a team. And they're going to become a team that's going to be a force to be reckoned with over the next 2.5 months.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like that. As the viral video once said, I think I got my swagger back. And that's what you're seeing from these guys. Today was that day where maybe it's not exactly like last year, but to see those guys celebrating, to see them talking a little bit of trash, and you could think whatever you want about that at the end of the game. I mean, look, I think if Roy Williams is there, that's probably something that is criticized pretty heavily by him in the locker room. Maybe it was by Hubert Davis and his staff as well. Who knows? I think that moment was important because for Carolina, you need some guys on this team that are just going to talk trash, man. You need some guys that are going to be confident no matter what. And I don't know if this is the moment where that happens because this came in a win. But I do think that you like to see guys talking that smack when you find a way to pull out a victory like this. And yeah, they've shortened the rotation. Their identity is starting to come into form. First of all, it's very similar to last year. In order to succeed, you're going to be a team that's going to have to defend at an incredibly high rate. Because yes, you are a good offensive team. But that team that we saw in the non-conference maybe that wasn't a great indication of just how of what you are offensively. I think this team is a good scoring team. I don't think that they are one of the best scoring teams in the country consistently, game in and game out. But I think what they've done is they've also found out that we've got a special freshman and we've got to play through him. And you said it earlier. Credit to RJ Davis as well for saying, this is our best player right now. We need to play through him. I'm still going to be there. I'm still going to be able to hit big shots when you need me to. But right now, we need to play through a guy in Ian Jackson who's on fire, who nobody in the country has been able to solve in these last 6 games. And I think it's really just completely turned the identity of this Carolina team. I mean, look, as a fan now, you should feel pretty confident that Carolina can win the games that they have to win in conference. And you should also be starting to feel pretty good about their chances to win those toss-up games that they're going to have later on in the season. A couple of weeks ago, we would have been sitting here telling you, what are you, crazy? You actually believe that this team is going to get that done? I mean, hell, you go back to that Notre Dame game. You're really telling me after that performance that Carolina is a team that's going to be able to beat a lot of these good teams in the conference? Even the teams that are average, they're going to take care of them in conference play. Now, I think you're starting to become a little more confident that with the jump that we've seen from this team as a whole defensively, especially what we've seen from Jalen Washington and the continued scoring ability that pours through each and every game for me and Jackson, that this is a tournament team and a team that when they get to the tournament, they could potentially make a little bit of noise, at least get to that second weekend, which, coming into conference play, probably didn't think that was on the table because of how poorly they had played at certain moments.
Also, one last note before we get into our game balls. Carolina now 2-0 in the 1980s road version of the Throwbacks. They won in them against UCLA in the CBS Sports Classic, and they won in them today, of course, on the road at NC State. There's not a single bad uniform Carolina has at its arsenal. But if you could find a way to work the Argyle into that look of the uniform and make that your permanent uniform moving forward, I don't think Alexander Julian would be all that hurt by it, because the Argyle is, of course, the pattern that he came up with when he redesigned the uniforms before the 93 championship season. It's now, of course, basically it's in every athletic department's uniform. But nonetheless, that uniform looks clean. They're beautiful. And it feels good that they keep winning in them. Hopefully they keep wearing them and winning them as the season moves along. Hand out our game balls really quick. I'll go first. I'll give it to Jalen Washington, 12 points or 11 points, 12 rebound, double-double. His first double-double as a Tar Heel. And, of course, the game-winning dunk and the game-sealing block. So my game ball for the win at NC State goes to Jalen Washington.
Yeah, I'll give mine to, the other guy that definitely deserves it is Ian Jackson. Look, man, Elliot Cadeau, hard to leave him off of here because of the plays that he made for Carolina down the stretch. But Ian Jackson is just a guy that every time Carolina needs a big shot, they've gone to him and he's made it. And today was the perfect example of that. 21 points, 8 of 15 overall from the field. Most importantly, 5 of 8 from beyond the arc. And that was where he did most of his damage when Carolina needed clutch shots. I'm going to step, I'm behind the line. I'm going to catch it, shoot it, and knock it down. And what a huge performance from him in this game in 32 minutes. He continues to just be a transcendent freshman for Carolina. Another great performance from him.
All right, with that, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. In the meantime, guys, we're going to encourage you to visit the website. That's heeltoughblog.com. The recap of the game is already posted, so you can go and read a little bit more in depth about tonight's win as I continue to take you through the college basketball season. The Heels landed another transfer just before we got on here and started recording. Anthony will have you covered on that front as well. So still a busy time for the website. Of course, with basketball season in full conference play, and the football team still, Bill Belichick still putting together a staff and still landing players out of the portal and busy on the high school recruiting trail. You want to visit the website every single morning, afternoon, and evening for the latest and the best Carolina basketball, Tar Heel football coverage. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Simply search the Four Corners Podcast. We'll pop up there. We encourage you guys, rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the basketball season. Well, with that, guys, this is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.
Oh, yeah, I got you.